We have 150,000 employees and they don't understand all the great things we're doing. So I sent an email to all 150,000. It
Yeah,
didn't come from internal comms. It didn't have an HTML banner.
I
It
love.
didn't have my corporate profile. It had
Yeah.
me. It had my 3-year-old daughter and her 3-year-old friend next to our
Oh,
water cooler laughing. That was a
yeah.
picture.
Okay.
And then I just told a little bit about myself and why I was sending this out. And I said, here's 3 great things that I bet you didn't know about Infosys. It was pretty scary. 150,000 and you hit send. And everybody loved it.
What was the fear like behind that though?
Normally, the best practice is if you're going to Gartner Group to give a new value proposition and the CEO's there, you run it by the CEO first.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Evidence of the Elite. Some executives spend their entire career trying not to rock the boat. Paul Gottsegen built his entire career doing the opposite. He's held senior marketing roles at Compaq, at HP, and at Dell. Then he walked into 2 of the toughest branding turnarounds in tech at Infosys and at Mindtree and made both of them stick. Today, he's CMO, president of ISG, where he's helped drive the firm into a leading position in AI. And this year, he published a book called Do the Opposite, Sort of, which is already climbing bestseller lists. I wanted him on the show because the title isn't a gimmick, it's how he actually operates. And I want to know what that looks like when you're the one in the room that you're making the call and you're under pressure to conform.
I promoted myself just by anticipating, having the skill to develop the value prop, anticipating that question, kind of having the wherewithal to listen and jump in. And in some ways, I think that's more productive and better for your career than if you're just so anxious about the next role and you're always applying for jobs.
So welcome to the show. So just tell us a little bit about your background, where you live, a little bit about your family, just your background, your history.
Yep. Well, I'm speaking to you now from Morristown, New Jersey. We moved here in 2010, but I grew up in New Orleans. I do not have the accent, but both of my parents were born and raised in New Orleans. I'm a career marketing person, but it broadened beyond that. It did, like as you said, Compaq, Dell, HP. I was a product marketing for computer companies, and then I got my first chief marketing officer job. It drove the move to New Jersey in 2010 for one of the really large Indian-based outsourcers called Infosys, the one that kind of started it all. And so it moved me up here to New Jersey, and I've been chief marketing officer for a company called Mindtree and now ISG, but do a lot of sales enablement strategy alliances. My favorite thing is just leading and inspiring people, whether they are on my team or colleagues or entire organizations I work with or my LinkedIn network. Life is short. There's too much negativity. I like to bring a lot of positivity, and I notice that people really feed off that and do some of their best work if you give them a lot of empowerment and space and encouragement and feeling of safety. Definitely involved in a lot of big transformations and turnarounds, whether it be brand transformation or company turnaround, both in the hardware and the services business. Always in technology, though. That's the one thing that's never changed with me. I don't sell candy bars or cigarettes or alcohol. It's always computer or computer services.
I love that. So when was the time where you realized that the empowerment of people, the positivity, was there a time, was it later on or very early in your career?
Well, the empowerment one, I've always worked for large companies, but right at the turn of the century, dot-com boom, I went to a startup that was a Silicon Valley startup, and I learned a lot about it and, being at a startup with no support system. But I was on Texas time and it was a California company. So I'd get there before anybody else in the morning and I'd flip the light switch on because it was like a 40-person company. And one day when I flipped the light switch on, I thought, I'm going to pretend like this is my company, even though I'm the chief marketing officer. My dad and my grandfather, they had their own company. They literally flipped the lights on. It was literally their company.
Wow.
And it gave me this sense of empowerment. And what I do with my team is have this discussion about turn the lights on, even though at all of our companies now the lights just come on and off. I don't even know where the switch is, but I say I want you to act like this is your company, because what happens is at any company of any size, your mind plays tricks with you and you become a role player thinking that's what the company wants you to do, and you sort of limit your ceiling of what ideas you can generate and what ideas you can go deliver on. So anytime I start a new job, I always have the turn the lights on conversation with the team and explain to them that all the good ideas are going to come from them. I might come up with a few, and that I encourage them. I don't like fail fast because I don't like failing, but it is kind of a similar concept. So it's a discussion I'll have with the team, and then I'll practice encouraging them. So here's an example. There's clues. If they come to me and say, "What do you want me to do, Paul?" That's a red flag for me. I'll
Yes.
say, "No, don't ever say that. Always come with a recommendation." Or if they'll say, "Oh, I know you like it this way," or "You told me to do it this way." Any of these kind of phrases, I'll immediately say, "Okay, I need to have the discussion with this person." And the way I do it with my boss today and for decades is I'll say, "Mike, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going 100 miles an hour. As always, I'm open to any advice you have, and I'll course correct as you give me any advice, but I'm going." And that gives the posture that I own it,
Sure.
and I'm open to feedback, but I'm not sitting around waiting for a review period. That gives me and everybody around me a sense of empowerment that delivers stellar results. It's just a key way to employ a leadership of a team.
So powerful. And what I've seen so often is where leaders struggle is exactly what you said, is listening enough to hear the messages, to hear what they're really saying, I'm underlying, right? Is this the way you want it? And so what helped you really hone in on your listening skills, or was that something that was pretty natural to you?
No, I had nothing was natural to me. Nothing. Nothing was natural. I've learned a bunch of great ways of leading teams and inspiring teams, but it was all by trial and error. When I first became a leader, I copied the style of my boss. My boss was this legendary, it was Compaq back in
Yeah.
the day,
Yeah.
and he was the best leader at his level, at kind of a product manager level. And so I just thought, well, I'm going to copy his style. Well, guess what? He had a very hard edge style.
Ah.
And I'm not a hard edged person. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like too nice. I'm too nice. I had to learn to be a little less nice. And nobody wanted to work for me because I copied my boss's style. And so, no, I had to learn how to get comfortable in my own skin, do my own style. I had to lead people the way I am. And part of it is listening for things people say that make me realize, like, okay, they think they're playing a defined role with a ceiling. And great, particularly the larger the company, the more you might feel like another brick in the wall or
Sure.
another cog in the big
Yeah.
machine. And that's fine. You can be a great brick in the wall, and that works. That can be good.
Yeah.
But if you this the whole do the opposite sort of concept is you have to do things a little bit differently if you want to be consistently great
Yeah.
and outperforming not just you but your team,
Sure.
and empowering the whole team around you and anybody you sort of come in contact with. All of a sudden the scales fall from their eyes and they realize, like, oh, okay, I'm limiting myself. I can go off and develop a new offering or come up with the right message or go talk to the CEO about something. And guess what? When you have that empowerment, you're going to get your nose bloodied. You're going to be
Yes.
like, you're going to be in the arena.
For sure.
And I've gotten my nose bloodied. But it's kind of most 90% of this kind of learning happens on the job. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to just get in there and do it. Now, you do have to sense your boss, and some bosses are not like me, and you
Yeah.
just have to know that and play your cards right. You can't just
Sure.
assume. I'm just telling you how I lead my teams and how I encourage people to lead their teams. But I've had some bosses where, okay, I'll treat my team one way, but my boss, I got to be a little bit more careful than they have to be with me. That's just
Sure. That
being
makes sense.
smart.
Yeah, absolutely be smart about it. What I heard you also say is that kind of philosophy of not just breaking out of your comfort zone, but also when you talked about your leaders and what following your old manager and doing what they did. And that's what I've seen a lot for the last 18 years. It's, I'm presenting like that manager or that VP, and they struggle because they're trying to be someone they're not. And when they fight that, that's what becomes really challenging. People that lose your credibility. You're fighting against something that is innately who you are. So, for example, you
Absolutely. I
contrarian.
mean, it turns out like I'm a quiet, even though it's funny because I like to speak and I'll post on LinkedIn, but in real life I like to be, or when I'm managing teams, I'm on the quiet side and silent. And my original boss was the opposite. He was
Ah,
out there. You always knew when he was around, and that didn't fit me. And not everybody has to be like me or be like my boss. You just
sure.
have to figure out what works for you in a corporate setting, but it should be something that's kind of your natural personality because especially now when I was given the example of decades ago, I wore a starched white shirt with a tie and a suit, not a sport jacket, every day. It was a different era. Some
Mm-hmm.
people smoked cigarettes in their office. It
Yeah.
was a long time ago. Now, people really want to connect with the human being that is their boss. You can't, it's not like the old cartoon style boss. I, I spend time making sure that the people around me know who, I don't want to overshare
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
detailed medical stuff or anything
Yeah.
like that or anything inappropriate, but I want them, they'll know what TV shows my wife and I are watching or what we did on vacation and we'll joke around. I want them to know like I'm not just a worker bee.
Yes.
I'm a person just like them because you're trying to create an emotional bond with your team.
Yeah.
And they can't do it if they don't see you as a real person just like them. And it
Agreed.
didn't used to be, the onus wasn't like that on a leader 20 years ago.
Yes. Which is where I see a lot of leaders who have been in the business 30, 40, 50 years. They struggle with creating that bond with their team. It's do as I say, that's it, just do it, get it done. It sounds like what you've done is created a really psychologically safe environment for your people, but it started with you and you sharing about yourself to create it's safe enough to talk about, my personal things, which is really great.
And you know what? But before COVID, when everything went virtual, it was a little easier if you were on the same hallway. You would just naturally, you'd see that person in the lunchroom or at the water cooler.
Yep.
So you couldn't help but get to know them a little bit better. How do you do that when every staff meeting is on Teams for the
Uh,
most part? So I do carve out. I have like I mean, it might come up naturally, but I'll definitely end the staff meeting. I'll make sure I'll watch the clock and we'll talk about, what are we streaming? What movies have we seen? What
that's
plays have
great.
we seen? It makes a big difference. It's a little dumb thing. It makes a really, really big difference. Otherwise, we're just robots.
Yeah, like you said, right? Shifting gears from meeting to meeting. I know when I was doing a lot of in-person corporate training, that's what I missed with the online training because you put people in online and there's no sidebar conversation like, hey, how was your weekend? It's all forced onto the next meeting. In your book, I know you talked a lot about the water cooler. So tell us a little bit about that because I love that you just mentioned that. That was cool.
This was the biggest phenomenon. So, I like to be an evangelist, and I learned early in my career, particularly for a marketing person.
Yeah.
What's funny is if a marketing person doesn't feel like that's part of their job, like, oh, no, 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 marketing, that's like the onus is on us to shout from the rooftops internally and externally. But the water cooler chatter, when I got to Infosys in 2010, and I was about a month in, and we had an offsite, and people were complaining that we have 150,000 employees and they don't understand all the great things we're doing. How do we get the word out? And I just thought, well, I've been tinkering with something at Dell and HP. So I sent an email to all 150,000, which just right there was unusual. It
Yeah.
didn't come from internal comms. It didn't have an HTML banner.
Which I
It didn't
love.
have my corporate profile. It had
Yep.
me. Actually, it had my 3-year-old daughter and her 3-year-old friend next to our
Oh,
water cooler laughing. That was a
yes.
picture.
So great.
And then I just told a little bit about myself and why I was sending this out. And I said, here's 3 great things that I bet you didn't know about Infosys. And I would always end it with the tagline, be loud, be proud. If you don't tell your customer the great things happening at Infosys, who will? And I sent out one, it was pretty scary, 150,000, and you hit send. And everybody loved it and it lit up and I did it every week and I moved it to my next 2 companies, Mindtree and ISG,
Great.
and I became famous for this and it worked for a number of reasons. One is because I never stopped. A lot
Yeah.
of times you'll do something like this, but if you're going to evangelize, you have to be consistent. The main thing was nobody else wrote it. I wrote it. It was
I
before
love it.
AI, but I
Yeah.
wrote it. And people could tell, oh, this is not like a leader. I hate to burst the bubble of everybody out there, but most leader emails get written by somebody in PR or internal
Yeah.
comms, and they'll review it and edit it. No, this was top to bottom me. It was graphical, and it was, I think it sound big-headed. It was witty and funny. It
Great.
was their favorite email of the week. And the funny thing for me is I was the CMO, I was chief strategy officer, I did a bunch of things. I kind of became famous as the water cooler chatter
I
guy.
still love
Yeah,
that.
and when I would go to our campus in Bangalore, which is this big, glorious campus in the middle of
Yeah.
Bangalore, I never felt like a Hollywood celebrity before or since. I'd
Oh,
walk around campus and all the people would look at me and point, there's the water cooler guy. That's him. That's the guy. But it made a big impact. And what I'll tell, what I say in the book and what I tell the people is, you, everybody can do this. I just gave a book talk to our summer interns at ISG. So
wonderful.
these are 19, 21-year-old kids who are just learning things. And I said, look, even as an intern, you're only here for 3 months. You could send out an email to a chunk of ISG and talk about what you're doing. People will accept it as long as it's authentic and it's from you. It'll take a while to do it, but everybody needs to be a natural evangelist. And that actually ties really well with our empowerment discussion because most people, whether they're leaders or individual contributors, feel like this is somebody else's job. This isn't for me to do. I just grabbed it, gave it a shot, and oh my gosh, it was the most wonderful thing that I ever thought. It was
Oh,
fantastic.
that's
Yeah, famous.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And just going back to the email that you sent out, and I love this because I feel like you're testing the waters, but you knew deep down. I'm assuming deep down you knew what was right. Sending that out, you got pushback about sending out this email without the PR banner and all the editing.
Yeah. I mean, at all three companies that I did this, Mindtree, ISG, and Infosys, the internal comms person
Yeah,
who usually reported to me, it was one of my
yeah,
leaders, would beg me, like, this isn't how we do internal comms. When we do internal comms, first of all, it shouldn't come from my mailbox. It's got to come from the Marketo mailbox or whatever. It's got to have HTML. It's got to have your corporate. This was none of that. And I just refused. And the reason I refuse is because it's the opposite of what they expect. This is sort of, I'm actually not a contrarian. I actually think contrarians are a little annoying. You know, you say white, I say black, you say yes, I say no. That's not my personality. I just look at how things are done, like a corporate email, or how you empower your team, or how you run a meeting, how
mm,
you give a presentation, how you do a PowerPoint slide, just sort
yeah,
of anything. And I say, gosh, there's got to be a better way. But what happens is, again, your mind plays tricks on you. People see the best practice of how everybody begins a presentation. So I'll give you an example. Every time you watch somebody present, 80% of the time, they'll say something like, I know this would be the first words out of their mouth. I know I'm the only one standing in between you and drinks or lunch. And the first time
right.
I heard that, like 30 years ago, it was hilarious. And the second time, kind of funny. And
Yeah,
now it's like a crutch. Like it's nerve wracking to get in front of a group.
sure.
So what I explain in the book is, do anything but that. Have
Mm,
an opening that brings them in. That's the only time you're guaranteed to have their attention. So
so
that's
true. That's a
not being a contrarian. I'm just sort of doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
That's great. And especially opening up a presentation like that just gives them every idea that they should probably check out because it's not going to be good. You set it up for
Yeah.
this is going to stink. So I'm warning you. Let's go.
And kind of like evangelism, like if you would have told me years ago, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to be big headed. If you'd have told me I was a great presenter, I'd be like,
Yeah.
no way, no
Yeah.
way. That is not who I am. And I learned, and I think actually with the book, you'd fast forward through a lot of the tough nosebleeds that I had. But no, I'm a great presenter, and part of it is I don't follow the best practice.
Yes. Yeah.
Like think about like there's a lot to it, this whole chapter on it, but the end is an easy one to talk about for 1 minute because just watch when anybody, it could be an awesome presentation, probably is, but then at the end, they haven't memorized their last two sentences. So they'll always say the same two words pretty much. They'll look around, they're done. You know they're done, they know they're done.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
know oh gosh, I haven't had, what's my big close? So they'll look around and say, well, with that, Radia, let me turn it back over to you.
Yeah.
With that. You want to like, I've never literally dropped the mic, like I don't have that much guts,
Yeah.
but I do mic drop endings.
Yes. It's
And it'll be
wonderful.
a really rousing ending. And I had to learn this. It's a
Yeah.
skill anybody can learn to be a great presenter. Anybody can
Absolutely.
learn to make PowerPoint slides that don't look like speaker notes.
Absolutely.
Anybody can learn to post on LinkedIn that's engaging. And that'll put you in the top 1% if you just give it a little bit of a try.
And that's so true, right? With this way the world is, there's so much information. There's no reason we can't go out and learn how to do that. And just going back to the presentations, I mean, been helping people with presentation skills for a solid like 16 years, and it's the same. You're right. It's figure out your opening so it's powerful, your closing so it's powerful. But I believe everyone can learn because I was the same. I was terrified of public
Yeah,
speaking and then
yes,
speaking in
I
front of
still
people.
am. The people tease me about the book because there was a Seinfeld episode of Do the Opposite with
Yeah.
George, did the opposite because his life was so terrible. But Seinfeld is sort of a great example of a story arc. It would always start, things would thread, and it would end where it started. And when you
Mm.
give a presentation,
Side
you're
the
not
book.
going slide to slide, you're ending where it started. So that's, the Do the Opposite book is it's really the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. What happened is I people would say, because I write a lot, and people would say, yeah, I can't wait to read your book. And I'm like,
Yes.
what are you talking about? I'm not writing a book. But it put the thought in my head, and I've got a bunch of chief marketing officers that are in my coaching tree that are all over the technology industry. And I thought, oh, it's so exciting to see these people that I spent a little time or a lot of time with, and how do I scale that? And I thought, well, let me write a book. No AI, no Gen AI, no Ghost. It's just like, I may not be, Ernest Hemingway or Malcolm Gladwell or anybody amazing like that, but I think it's an easy read. And the feedback I get is it's so pragmatic.
So,
It's like a play, but I'm not a super intellectual person.
yeah.
I'm just sort of a get stuff done type of
Yeah.
person. And that comes across in the book.
It definitely comes across in the book. And I am such a big reader and read so many business books. And honestly, Paul, I thought it was so practical, so easy to apply. And it hit on all the things. I've been coaching leaders for so many years, and it's hit on all the things, the PowerPoint struggles, how do I sell myself and influence? And there's just so many ideas that I thought were really powerful. And I hope some of just the people listening just pick up the book. It's 100% worth it. I think it was such a great read. Going back to, you had mentioned something before about kind of selling yourself, and no one else is going to do it. And I come across that a lot with people I coach, people I'm training, that and sometimes it's, the way we're raised is not talk about yourself. And if you do that, you're seen a certain way. What have you done to help sell yourself, or what would you recommend other people do to get out of their heads about it sounding like they're bragging? They're just selling themselves and their ideas, because no one else, right? No one else is going to tell them within the organization that.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point because it's tricky. There's a razor's edge between coming across as obnoxious and having people and developing your personal brand.
Yes.
Um, if you're on LinkedIn, I think a lot of people are getting tired of LinkedIn. So one thing I think people are getting tired about is, I'm
Eh,
truly honored to be named, blah, blah, blah. And I've done this.
yeah.
I've made every mistake, by the way. Can I
Yeah.
just say I've made every mistake? But I think it's a mistake to talk about how honored, kind of the humble brags
Mm.
about how you're honored for this and honored for that. And I think if you can demonstrate a focus on helping other people and helping your firm and helping your team and giving people new ideas.
Yeah.
And it's going to sound like, just trying to give good karma.
Hmm.
I think that gives you a platform where people will look up to you. So what happened to me is on LinkedIn, I used to be, oh, I'm on it. I would win something random and be like, ah, look, I won. I want to tell everybody. And it was okay. And then what I started doing was just giving people advice
Mm.
because I've been doing this for 40 years and I think I have something to say and I like to write and people vote with their clicks. So I'm giving people advice and and I did get named as this big influencer on LinkedIn, but I never tag people. I
Hmm.
never do any hashtags. I'm
Why
not
not?
out.
Why not tagging people? I'm curious.
I never want like because and this is going to sound weird.
Well, you're a marketing guy, so
You're in my network, and
yeah.
you and a bunch of other people are in my network. So when I'm putting something on LinkedIn, I'm sending you a message. I'm not going to LinkedIn to collect more followers.
Right.
If I see a lot of posts where people will put 8 hashtags, and they'll copy me and a bunch of people, and I'm thinking I can barely even see what you're saying. You're just really like, are you doing all that because you're trying to go viral? And
Oh, yeah.
it's nice when you go viral and you collect a bunch of followers because you have a bigger impact. But no, I will never, ever, ever tag people because I want people to know, like, if you're connected with me,
Mm.
I might not even have met you in person. I might not know you that well, but hey, you're connected with me, so I'm going to give you some advice or some thoughts, and hopefully
Mhm.
it will help you. Um, if 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 somehow through the algorithm I collect another follower, fine.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm not, and it's funny. But on the self promotion, no, you have to be very careful. I think that the funny thing is, like, I'll take a different twist on that though, but it's sort of interesting when I look back. I've worked for 7 different companies and always had sort of different roles in the different companies. Not once have I ever applied for a job. Never, never. Inside of a company, not once have I ever done an internal application for a job.
Amazing.
I just thought, and I've never had a 5-year plan.
Hmm.
I just thought, so it's sort of a twist on the self promotion. I just thought if I do the opposite in how I approach things and distinguish myself in how I perform, mainly by being well rounded, not just marketing, but doing a lot of other things, good things might happen.
Yeah.
And
Speaks
so I
for,
kind of put myself at the mercy of the system.
yeah.
And in some ways, I think that's more productive and better for your career than if you're just so anxious about the next role and you're always applying for jobs internally
Mm.
or externally. I've spoken to CMOs who come to me for advice and say, I've got a lot of good people on my team, but they're like almost more focused on their next role than their current role, and it's holding them back. Focusing on your current role and having some faith that that will blossom into
Yeah.
another role. And being well rounded, that the whole concept of the do the opposite is how do you distinguish yourself? And that ends up promoting you.
Yeah, I mean, very much, like you said, very much a personal brand. How do people perceive you within the organization? I just also think of the people that I had someone recently that I was coaching that was doing amazing work, and I really gave her the push to let people know of what she's doing because she was very siloed. And so while she was doing that, that ended up being a really big win for her because she was just internally was like, well, I don't, that's not how I was raised.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example where, like, when I joined Infosys, it was my first chief marketing officer role. I was a fish out of water because I was a hardware person, I didn't know what services was.
Yeah.
I've been to India like 45 times now, but in 2010, I had never been there. I had no experience working for a non-US company. So everything was different for me, and it was a little bit risky.
Mm.
And any CMO, the first thing you do is you revamp the value prop. That's what I always did. It's what I like to do. And I did it at Infosys, and I was going to show it to the CEO, but I hadn't had a chance. And he was a tough cookie, great guy named Shibu Lal. He was the CEO and founder. And we had a meeting at Gartner Group, the big research firm. And it was just him and I and the leader at Gartner. And I thought, you know what? I bet they're going to ask him what makes Infosys different. So I anticipated that. And I thought, well, let me jump in when they ask anything approaching that. And I'm going to just articulate the value prop I just developed of why
Hmm.
Infosys is so great. And I'm going to do it performatively like it's off the cuff. It won't be
Ah.
like I'm presenting to them. And sure enough, I got my opening like 30 minutes in. And as I'm just, waxing poetic about how awesome Infosys is, how differentiated we are, I was so prepared, even though I was acting like I was just thinking of it. And in the corner of my eye, Shubhu Lal, the CEO, very serious guy, was staring at me, stone faced. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. When we walked out of Gartner and back into the streets of Cambridge or Boston or wherever, he put his arms around me, or one arm,
Yeah, yeah.
and said, "Oh, let's introduce this to the whole company." And I was in his inner circle ever since that.
Wow.
So I promoted myself just by anticipating, having the skill to develop the value prop,
Mm.
anticipating that question, kind of having the wherewithal to listen and jump in
Yep.
right as that question was asked,
Yep.
to have the performative skills to just make it sound authentic, even though I had really practiced in front of a mirror 10 times.
What was the fear like behind that though? What was one fear that might have been there?
Normally, this is a do the opposite. The best practice is if you're going to Gartner Group to give a new value proposition and the CEO's there, you run it by the CEO first.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the fear that he'd say, "I don't know what you were talking about." And now, working with CEOs, I worked with Michael Dell a lot and Mark Hurd a lot.
Nice. Yep.
We might not have time to get too far into it, but you're going to distinguish yourself by knowing how to interact with a big boss, a skip level boss, your boss's boss, your boss. Everybody gets those opportunities, and they usually just sort of answer the exact question. They're a little scared, so they keep it tight to the vest, and it's
Mm.
a big missed opportunity. So that one was an example of an opportunity I grabbed and really paid off.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Throughout your career, I have to ask this because I feel like people like you have also mentored so many other people. When did you pick up any mentors, coaches that helped you have that belief in yourself? Because I know for me, I've had coaches that they tell me I have an insane belief in myself, and I do, and I think that's because I've surrounded myself with people that believe I
I'm
have.
going to go back to an early mentor, but I'll just Shibu Lal. He was like, he was a great mentor in his own way. I mean, he was CEO, so he didn't have time. But I will tell you, I made the worst mistake ever. It was a PR mistake. I'm not going to tell you what it was.
Why
It was a,
not? We want to know.
it was so dumb. And I mean, a board member called me up and chewed me out. And then the minute I hung up from the board member, I called Shibulal, our CEO, and I confessed. I'm like, hey, I got to tell you what happened. And there was like a 20-second pause. And he said, it's in the past. That
Wow.
was it. And he knew I felt horrible. He knew I learned my lesson. There was nothing he was going to say unless he wanted to fire me on the spot.
Yeah.
It wasn't really fireable, but he could have yelled at me. And, that's a way of mentoring where he wasn't really being my mentor, but it's like, okay, I'm going to do that the next time somebody on my team, I know they've learned. I had a mentor in my formative years
Mm.
at Compaq that the one who I tried to channel his personality when I became a manager, but he taught me so many big and little things. He was a high achiever. He was a contrarian. He was a true contrarian.
Mm. Okay. Maybe we got a
But
little from him.
he could be, details matter. To this day, I'll see people with a PowerPoint presentation and they'll have one line wraparound on their title. And I'll be like, oh my God, Rod or Rod Schrock, he would have never let me get away with an orphan wraparound. It'd be that level of detail.
That's
But
great.
more than anything else, it was the proactivity and the empowerment. This
Huh.
guy felt like you sensed that he turned the lights on every morning, and I picked it up when I was at the startup, but he was the one that kind of got me on the path to everything. And I think it's crucial to have both formal mentors and like Rod was to me, and informal mentors. Shabulal definitely was for me. I've had like three or four that were crucial
Yeah.
for me, and I'm probably pretty bad of when HR does at any company does the formal mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
I've struggled with that.
Why?
It's forced. It's forced. But like for example, recently somebody mentoring one of our hypos at ISG introduced me because she's in marketing, but in kind of marketing for one of our clients. And I had a great conversation with her. And I do a lot of mentoring for um, kids of people my generation that are just graduating or in their first job and just want to understand marketing and how to get a job or how to use LinkedIn or what
Oh,
marketing
yeah.
is about. So I do spend a lot of time doing that. I think it's a crucial element to give back. I'm actually having a breakfast tomorrow with a university student who really smart guy and just trying to figure out, where to go from here.
And do you find you're spending more time mentoring them about the things that they wouldn't expect? Like not the marketing, but more about how they're branding themselves, how they're communicating, how they're building relationships.
It's how to communicate, how to interview. I mean, some of them are really basic. It's like, okay, on your LinkedIn profile, you've got, what looks like a frat photo and a funny background photo. Let's talk about your LinkedIn.
First
Or
impression.
it's just, how do you ask questions in an interview? How do you prepare? Um, but no, mentoring, like I say, the thing that the biggest thrill, what makes my day is every once in a while somebody will say, "Oh, I've got a Paul file with all the things that the gems you told me. I've got a special file for that."
Mm-hmm.
And now, like when I wrote the book, I wrote it to try to scale it. Guess what? Every day, and I didn't write the book like to pay the mortgage.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
anybody who writes a book that's not famous like
I
me will
know.
tell you it doesn't pay the mortgage.
No,
But every day, I'll get a note from somebody, and they'll tell me how much the book helped them.
that's so great.
And I just feel on top of the world. I mean, I
Yeah,
can't tell you. It's like taking a magic pill. It just makes
yeah.
my day. It's just a wonderful feeling when somebody told me that they loved the book.
That's so great. And I think also when you're mentoring, I mean, I know years of facilitating training, I learned so much from the people that I taught. And so, I'd be teaching, but at the same time, I'd be learning about people as I'm delivering and as I'm mentoring and coaching. And I think there's something to be said too, where as you're mentoring others, you're gaining so much insight on, the generational differences, right? What's important
Oh,
to them.
the generational differences are so crucial. And I hate to say, I'll just tell you, I'm 63. I'm going to tell you my age. So, some of the people that work for me are younger than my own children.
Yeah.
And, but I've been there. And so I had a recent conversation about work-life balance. I'm very
Mm.
sensitive to people with young kids
Yes.
because I remember what that was like. And
Hmm.
even though I'm an empty nester, not everybody is.
Right.
So I had to have a mentoring conversation very, very recently of someone who's so ambitious and so high performing, but has three young
Around
kids
here.
and is the mom. So of course
Yeah.
does more work than the dad. And I said I had to have a whole discussion about it's okay to go one click the other way. She's
Hmm.
doing so great.
That's
And
right.
I worry that people, if they sacrifice too much at the wrong point in their life, it's not good for them. It's not good for the firm.
Yeah.
It's not
Absolutely.
good for anybody. But people lose sight of that and they get in the whirlwind of climbing the corporate ladder. But everybody has to be respectful of the generations and the life events and family. And we're not all universal soldiers dealing with the same thing. And
No.
you have to remember that even if you're my age and you're past that age where it's really, really hard to balance things. So I actually wrote a lot about that in work-life balance because I work really hard, but I have loads of fun,
Yeah.
and I try to explain that to my team. I have low attrition rates, but I think a little part of it is I really try to keep an eye. I don't want people to burn out
That's
because it
super
doesn't do
important.
anybody good.
No, no. And I know in the beginning of the book too, you called yourself a workaholic, and I feel like I might be one of those people too. I think, but But there's nothing wrong with it. If you love it and you enjoy it, I think, like you said, everyone's different. Some people, I don't have kids, so I don't have to. I love working. I love working on the weekend sometimes, but balancing it, and integrating your life, I think, is so important. But I love that even though you're like that, you still have a pulse on your people, not expecting the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to ask you about avoiding burnout, because the leaders I coach that is probably one of the biggest things that I focus on, is helping them before they get to the point of burnout, which is obviously, we know, disengagement, and then the organization suffers turnover and all the things. But when was a time where you felt you were burned out and were able to get out of it or figure things out? Was there an aha moment for you?
I'm going to go back to the early Infosys days, only because most of the people, 90% of my team was in Bangalore, India, which is 10 and a half time zones away. So I thought, and I'm a hard worker, and I didn't know how to manage. And I thought, okay, I woke up at 5 in the morning, because that was at that was 3 in the afternoon or 2:30 in the afternoon. And then at 11 at night, they would be waking up for the next day. And I was burning the candle on both ends, because I was nervous and wanted to do a good job. And I burned out. And since then,
When you say you burned out, how did you know?
well, it just, lack of sleep. I wasn't performing at my best. We still did amazing work, but I just physically didn't feel that great. I probably wasn't in as great of shape. Boy, I stopped that immediately, and I'm the biggest health nut of anybody I know. It's kind of one of my passions, but I'll say sleep is a non-negotiable. Um, Really, I have a whole system about that. Everybody needs a hobby that they're intensely interested in. For me, it's golf, weightlifting, playing guitar. I've got
Nice,
three, but
nice.
that's a warning sign for me. And a lot of people, when you meet them at a cocktail party, say, "Oh, what do you do?"
Yeah,
Well, what if it's embarrassing? What if it looks like, well, I'm a CMO and you're just whatever,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a little bit of off-putting. So my icebreaker is, hey, what are your hobbies?
I love that.
And it's fun until they say, work. Work is my hobby. And then I'm like, okay,
I get that all the
you're
time.
heading toward a burnout if work is your hobby. So you just have a hobby, get sleep. Do the opposite move is 100% plant-based vegan. And you don't have to be. You could just do like one meal a week. But, I see people eating cookies and
Ugh,
Coke and
I know.
cheeseburgers and bacon, and it all tastes good.
It's so
But
bad.
we're here for the long haul, and we're trying. There's a lot to burning out,
Yeah. So,
and enjoying your life. And I want to enjoy. I love what I do. I
yeah.
love ISG. I love the role I'm in. I love the industry I'm in. I work nights and weekends because I love it, but I also have loads of fun
Yeah.
and all my hobbies. And I'm a grandfather now, and oh my gosh,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that's everything everybody said. And we take great vacations, and nothing fancy, but just, the
Yeah.
beach or whatever, because I want to sustain it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. Went to a lot of old friends and said, hey, I wrote a book if you're interested. And two people said, no, I'm not going to read any books until I retire.
Oh no,
I
that's so,
just thought, well, how sad is that?
that's so sad.
That's really sad. You're
That's so
not going to read a
sad.
book until you retire. What's happening in your life?
Uh,
So there's signs of burnout all over the place.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I hear that a lot too, where people say, "Well, I just can't wait to retire." And it's in my head,
I'll
I think,
work out when I retire. Like,
well, you won't be able to do much when you're.
no.
I look at I'm so blessed. My parents, my mother's 77, my father's 83 now, like so healthy, fixing stuff around the house, building ponds, gardening, working out. They have the best life ever. And it's really because they did the right things beforehand. So it's the long game. I totally agree.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
totally
it's
agree.
hard. I mean, it's hard. I have a hard time just shutting off at 6 p.m. or whatever time. It's all integrated. It's
Mm,
all integrated in.
yes.
That's me. I'm a
Yes.
good integrator.
Yeah.
I'm very responsive. Sometimes I'm so responsive, people say, "Oh, I feel bad for you. You must not be on vacation." Like, no, 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 I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I'm juggling it all, and I have my own way of doing it, and it works for me.
It works for you. Yeah, I think that's the most important too for those people that have that kind of work ethic is, like you said, communicating it to others. Because I'm doing it doesn't mean that I'm expecting it of you. Where I've worked for some leaders, I've seen some leaders who, emailing on the weekends, creates an expectation. So the communication is not, hey, I don't expect you to do it. So people are not burning out. So we'll close out with one thing that I'd love to hear is just, what was a really challenging time, and I want to think of, like, even if it was like personally in your life, that impacted you, what helped you get out of that? Because I know so many people look at someone like you, Paul, and they see all of your success and they figure, well, you wrote a book, you've worked for all these massive companies, and it must have been easier for you, right? Until they read the book. But knowing that there's something, that a time that might have been quite a bit challenging, and how you got yourself out of it, because I feel like that's where confidence comes from, is going back and looking at the reps, the times that you were able to get yourself out of challenging times. And I know there's probably millions, but
there's a lot to choose from. Mindtree was such an amazing experience. This is a firm, a systems integrator like Infosys or Accenture, but it went from like 400 million to over $1 billion in a short time while I was there, because it was a great team, really great culture. And I had placed a really big bet and spent a lot of money on one project. And Mindtree had this empowerment culture.
yeah,
And they sort of gave me all this rope, which is good and bad, because there was really no guardrail. And I was like all in. And I invested a lot trying to build a new sales channel. And it was very, like, the ROI was zero until one day it became infinity. And my boss was nice, the CEO, but they were nervous about how much money I was spending developing the sales channel. And it's an art form. There's a little bit of risk. When you're a leader, doesn't matter if you're a CMO or any other leader or the CEO or anybody on the CEO's staff. And I took this risk because I believed in it. I had enough experience to know, like, I think this will work.
yeah,
I couldn't guarantee it.
sure.
And then this sales channel, we got our biggest deal in the history of Mindtree through this advisory channel. And then it became a key driver of our growth. And I went from somebody they were worried about because I was sinking so much money into this, into an all-time hero. And guess what? That sales channel was called ISG, the company I work for now. That's how one thing led to another. And I met my current boss, the chairman and CEO of ISG, when I was at Mindtree developing this channel. But there's no guarantees. It's sort of like history. You always think America's going to win the Revolutionary War, but no. I mean, that's just how it turned out. And, well, I guess Paul was always going to develop this sales channel. No, I took a risk.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I put everything I had into it. Any superpower I might have had. I mean, I was really I knew that the pressure was on and that this was a big bet.
Was there anything that prevented you from getting into the overthinking? Because a lot of that is overthinking of what's the outcome going to be. That could have been built earlier on.
Yeah, I had to just not. It's sort of like when I play golf. I couldn't think too much about what's happening around me and just focus on the task at hand.
Yeah.
Focus on the task at hand. But it is a case study in being well-rounded. That is one thing. If I'm, like, I'll mentor people who are 10 years into their career, and usually the mentoring in that case is totally different than than the kids.
Yeah.
10 years into their career, it's always about how do you become more well-rounded.
Sure.
You've been a PR expert at a PR agency for 10 years. Go work in industry as a PR lead at a company like Infosys or Mindtree. And in the crucible of this Mindtree time, I was good at a lot of different things. And so it put me in a position where I could just deploy all these tools that I had built up over the years. So it's just, I can't emphasize enough, being when you do place these bets and you're under the gun, just being well-rounded. For a marketing person, it means you can do strategy, you can evangelize, you can understand how to do customer research, there's a lot of things involved.
And that's I think more important than anything now with just, the jobs, there's so many layoffs, right? They've been in one, area for so long. And so if you can become more well-rounded and start dabbling in some other things.
Become an expert in deploying AI and not being scared of AI.
Um,
I've become an expert.
that's how have you gone about and done that?
You have to spend a lot of time doing it, and you have to be clear, like that you can't write our thought leadership pieces with AI, but we've developed all sorts of ways that we do marketing with, very few people. We have a huge impact because we lean on AI as an important tool. This is what we advise our clients as well. And if you're not using AI all day, every day, in whatever your role is, then you will have some job insecurity.
Sure.
Because what happens is, like for me in marketing and as a CMO, the job is shifted because I use AI now, moving on to other things.
Yes. Yes.
And it's way more dramatic than when, say, MarTech hit and the job shifted a little bit. This is 10 times that. So,
Yeah. So learning it and not being afraid of it. I think that is something that people, I mean, this world is just moving faster and faster and faster. It's,
I did have my nephew a week ago give me a master class because he's 30 years old, and
I love it.
just know he was more familiar with some of the finer points than me.
That's
And I
great.
thought I was good, but I learned a ton about both Claude and ChatGPT and all these little details I had never realized. You just have to keep learning.
How did he learn? Is he studying that?
He's just
YouTube?
30 years old and loves it, so he's just a black belt at it. So find somebody that's a black belt that's willing to give you a little bit of time.
I love that. Wonderful.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate just all your insights. Again, for those listening, I will link Paul's LinkedIn because he adds a lot of value there, and just where to find him, and also a link to the book to purchase. And again, doing leadership training and coaching for 18 years, I highly recommend the book. It was something that I thought was practical that I may even be sharing with a lot of my coachees to read. I think it's really important. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for finding a source of just practicality in your own experience and not being theoretical. I so appreciate that, Paul.